Welcome to the first public meeting for the Kumeyaay Corridor Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. My name is Jessica Sisko, and I will be serving as the moderator of tonight's meeting. Thank you for joining us. We're going to wait a few minutes to give everyone a chance to get logged in. In the meantime, if you would like to put your name and organization or affiliation in the chat, I can welcome people as you come in. I'd also like to note that we have Spanish interpretation tonight. So as we're waiting for people to get logged in, if you'd like to click on the globe icon on the bottom of your screen and select Spanish, you'll be able to participate and hear the Spanish audio. If you plan to listen to the presentation in English, please go ahead and click on the globe icon and select English. All right, let's see. I have a couple of people that have put their information in the chat. So Paul Coogan, Normal Heights for Smart Growth. Thank you for joining us. Let's see who else we have here. All right. So again, good evening and welcome everyone. We're going to give people about 3 more minutes or so to get logged in. In the meantime, if you'd like to put your name and organization or affiliation in the chat, that would be wonderful. It's entirely optional though. And I do want to note that this meeting has simultaneous Spanish interpretation. So if you would like to access the Spanish audio, you're going to want to click on the globe icon and select Spanish. If you plan on listening in English, please just go ahead and select English. That way you can hear if we have any comments or questions in Spanish, they'll be interpreted back for you in English. Okay. Oh, it looks like we have Richard Abraham from Lakeside Community Planning Group. Thanks for joining us. All right, we'll probably give people another minute or two to get logged in, and then we'll get started. And again, if you would like to put your name and affiliation or organization in the chat, we'll welcome you to the meeting. And as we're waiting, if you want to click on the globe icon and select either English or Spanish, that will allow you to listen to the remainder of the presentation in the language of your choice. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start with an overview of the interpretation services for the meeting tonight. Our meeting will be broadcast in English with simultaneous Spanish interpretation. Carlos Diaz will be serving as our Spanish interpreter. If you would like to follow the presentation in Spanish, a link to download the Spanish PowerPoint is available in the chat box here in just a moment. We'll put that in there for you. And you'll also want to make sure you click on the globe icon on the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. At this time, I'd like to welcome Carlos and invite him to repeat these instructions in Spanish.
Thank you and good afternoon. As was just indicated, we do have interpretation available to and from Spanish. I will begin with instructions in Spanish and I will be back. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Se está ofreciendo interpretación simultánea para esta sesión. Para hacer uso del servicio, solo es necesario que se desplace a la barra inferior de controles en Zoom. Ahí verá un globito terráqueo que dice interpretación y de ahí seleccionaría su idioma como español. Ahora, si nos acompaña en una aplicación móvil de Zoom, es decir, en un celular, tableta, vería primero donde dice más, los puntos suspensivos, de ahí la palabra interpretación o interpretation, y entonces escogería español. Once again, interpretation is being provided to both languages. As has already been said, you can click on the interpretation icon and select English as your language, or click on more, the three dots, if you're on a mobile device on Zoom, so that if there are any comments or questions in Spanish, you can hear them interpreted into English. Gracias, and thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. So we'll give people just a moment to select their language, and then we'll move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to review the meeting guidelines for this evening. The meeting will be recorded. Microphones will be muted during the presentation, and you may share comments and ask questions via the Q&A function. So you've got a Q&A box that's typically at the bottom of your screen. You can click on that and submit questions or comments at any time during the presentation. Time permitting, we will have we'll have opportunities to ask questions at the end of the presentation, and the Q&A session will also be recorded and posted online for later viewing. And you can also go to the project's virtual engagement hub to provide feedback and ask questions, and we'll put that link in the chat both in English and in Spanish. And now that we have some housekeeping items taken care of, we're going to move on to opening remarks. I'd like to welcome you to the first public meeting for the Kumeyaay Corridor Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. I'd now like to welcome and introduce City of San Diego Council President Sean Elo Rivera, who will provide us with opening remarks. Welcome, Council President Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Jessica. I just want to make sure you can hear me all right.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction and for the work that you do with Sandag. I appreciate everyone joining us today. I will first begin my remarks making space for a land acknowledgement of the ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay people. And that is reflecting on this being the land, the ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay people, is probably a good way of setting the table for what we're about to do here today. Today's workshop revolves around the planning, development, and use of ancestral land that was stolen hundreds of years ago. And as we move forward with today's workshop and our transportation vision for the region, we really, really must make sure to not forget the history of this land. As planners, engineers, and advocates, I ask that you work with the Kumeyaay community on transportation projects throughout our region. Kumeyaay people in our region hold important historical knowledge of this land and how we care for it while simultaneously building toward our vision. So with that, I will also like to formally introduce myself. My name is Sean Elo Rivera. I serve as the San Diego City Council President and the representative of the District 9 community. I want to thank you all for taking the time to participate in this evening's meeting, which is the first public meeting of the Kumeyaay Corridor Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. And that certainly is a mouthful, but it's important. And it's important because this part of our region is very diverse, as so are the ways that we move around this area. The Kumeyaay Corridor Plan will create a comprehensive set of sustainable, safe, and equitable transportation solutions that are tailored to meet the needs of neighborhoods and improve quality of life for everybody. The goals of the plan are to identify the transportation needs of the people that live, work, visit, and travel to the study area, gather input from the community on various solutions that integrate with our cities and neighborhoods while promoting an innovative, resilient, efficient, and accessible multimodal transportation system. And lastly, just as importantly, create a plan that enhances economic vitality, fosters safe and healthy communities, and improves equitable access to jobs and education. Your participation this evening is going to help us meet these goals, and we cannot do it without you. So thank you for taking time out of your evening. Please let us know what you think, and I will now pass it back to Sandag staff to kick off the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your remarks, Council President Elo Rivera. I'd now like to provide an opportunity for the Sandag and Caltrans leads for this evening to introduce themselves. Rachel and Melina, please go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you all for participating in tonight's meeting. My name is Rachel Kennedy. I am the Integrated Transportation Manager at Sandag and oversee the development of the comprehensive multimodal corridor plan. So really happy to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Melina Pereira. I am a Senior Transportation Planner at Caltrans and the Caltrans Project Manager for the Kumeyaay CMCP. Welcome.
Thank you, Rachel and Melina. Melina is now going to take us through our agenda for this evening.
Thank you, Jessica. So this slide provides a list of the topics that we will cover during this evening's presentation. We'll be sharing information about the 2021 regional plan. We will tell you about the overall comprehensive multimodal corridor plan program, and then focus in on this corridor, the Kumeyaay corridor CMCP. As we talk about the CMCP, we'll provide an overview of how we are gathering community input. And after our presentation, we will have time for comments and questions from the audience, and our project team will be happy to answer your questions. So our objectives for tonight's meeting are to share information about the Kumeyaay corridor and the corridor planning process, to collect input on the transportation needs and opportunities, to provide information about potential types of transportation solutions that will be explored for the corridor, and additional opportunities for you to participate. And Jessica, over to you for the first polling question.
Thanks, Melina. So throughout tonight's meeting, we'll have interactive polls, and this is the first of those polls. We'll also have a Q&A session, as Melina mentioned, towards the end of the meeting. So for our first poll, we'd really like to understand how you heard about this workshop. So we're asking you to please check all that apply. Was it through a Sandag or Caltrans website, at another Sandag or Caltrans meeting, through the virtual engagement hub, which is on Social Pinpoint, social media, Sandag or Caltrans eBlast, an other e-news source, a community group or organization, word of mouth, or other. And if it's something else, if you want to pop us a note in the chat, we'd appreciate that. So we'll give you just a minute here to take a look at the selections, and then we'll look at the poll results. Okay. All right, so thanks for providing your feedback here in this poll. It looks like we have social media. Quite a few of you indicated social media, followed by a Sandag or Caltrans eBlast, and then a handful of other methods. Okay. All right, so thank you for that feedback. And we're going to go ahead and move into the regional plan overview. And Rachel will take us through that regional plan overview.
Thank you, Jessica. Every 4 years, Sandag prepares a regional plan in collaboration with the 18 cities and County of San Diego, as well as regional, state, and federal partners. And this plan serves as a blueprint for how the region will grow and how people will move around out to the year 2050. The current regional plan was adopted by the Sandag Board of Directors in December of last year. And this plan used a data-driven approach to identify transportation projects and programs to help people access jobs, education, and services. And Sandag is required to update the regional plan every 4 years. And the transportation projects that are included must meet federal air quality standards and state requirements for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled by the year 2035. So the regional plan considers the unique needs of the region's corridors and identifies strategies to provide access and connectivity to our communities and tribal nations and improve safety and operations. Through this comprehensive multimodal corridor planning process, we will explore opportunities for improvements along the Kumeyaay corridor to complement the regional plan. And improvements recommended through this process may also be considered in the next update of the regional plan. Now I'd like to provide a little bit of an overview of what the comprehensive multimodal corridor plans, or as we sometimes refer to them, CMCPs. In September of 2019, the Sandag Board of Directors allocated funding to develop 11 corridor plans throughout the region. And 6 corridor plans are currently under development, and you can see them in the different colors on the map on this slide. And corridor plans evaluate all of the travel modes and transportation facilities in a defined area, and are designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, increase travel choices through performance enhancements and projects that balance transportation improvements with community impacts and needs. And these corridor plans are required in order to apply for certain state funding sources, including Senate Bill 1 funds, which we can then leverage with other funds that we have to support different transportation projects. So on this slide, you can see a little bit about the development process and how different types of plans are incorporated into the process. So with the CMCPs, they incorporate information from state and local documents, including the regional plan, the climate action plan for transportation infrastructure, the California transportation plan, and your local community plans as well. So after a corridor plan is approved, individual projects and programs and policies that are outlined in the document can then apply for various federal and state and local funding opportunities. And then ordinarily, we don't get money for all the projects at one time, but individual projects, as they receive funds, can move through our planning process. So once a project has funding secured, it can move into the Regional Transportation Improvement document, which is a 5-year multi-billion-dollar plan for projects that have secured funding. And then they can move through the part that you see on the right hand of the slide, doing environmental documents, design, and construction. So you can see there's a lot of steps needed to make projects into a reality that we can all use. So now we'll move to an overview of the Kumeyaay corridor. So this map here shows the Kumeyaay corridor study area, which encompasses approximately a 2-mile buffer around Interstate 8 between the bay and Lakeside. It's approximately a length of about 24 miles. You can see that there in the darker purple color. We also have an area of influence that was established with the intent of expanding engagement efforts to include the community of Alpine and the tribal communities of the Kumeyaay Nation. Another component of this effort is the Mission Valley Mobility Study, which is funded through a Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. And this part, in partnership with MTS and the City of San Diego, this study will identify and prioritize near-term mobility needs and focus on transportation services and access options within the part of the map that you can see with the little purple outline. So in order to better understand travel patterns, we've been looking at some different data and making sure that we understand how people are moving in and through this part of the region so that we can develop transportation projects that will serve people's needs. So this slide here summarizes some of the regional travel flows as they relate to our corridor study area. Out of the almost 11.5 million trips that occur in the region every day, over 30%, almost 3.5 million trips, either start or end within this study area. Of these approximately 3.5 million trips, about 6% are by people walking, about 1% by people riding bicycles, and the remaining 93% are people in vehicles. And that includes people who are driving alone, people who are carpooling or using rideshare services, and also people who are taking public transportation. So it's also important to note that over 1/3 of these trips are for distances less than 2.5 miles. So with improved infrastructure and technology, many of these trips may be able to be converted into active transportation trips or short transit trips. So next, I'll turn it to Jessica for another poll question.
All right, so for this poll question, we'd like to know a little about you and your connection to the study area. So we're asking that you please check all that apply. And within the study area, do you live, work, own a business, visit for shopping or entertainment, attend school, visit recreational areas, pass through the study area, or other? And for other, you could think about what brought you to the meeting tonight and put that in the chat for us, and I'll try to read it out if we get some responses there in terms of your connection to the study area. So we'll give you just a minute here to review the responses. Okay, we've got several people responding. I don't see anything in the chat yet, though. Okay. It's holding pretty steady here, so I think we'll take a look at the poll responses. All right, so we had quite a few people indicate visit for shopping or entertainment, followed by passing through the study area. And then we've got people that live in the study area, visit the recreational areas, and then work or attend school. And as additional thoughts come to mind, feel free to pop them into the chat because we'll be monitoring it throughout the meeting. And you, as a reminder, you can put any questions or comments that you have in the Q&A feature as we're going through the presentation, and we'll come back to those when we get to the Q&A session. All right, so we've got one more poll before we move into some additional existing conditions information. So now we're looking for a sense of what would improve your travel experience in the study area. And we've got a number of possible responses. I'll walk us through those. So feeling safe while using transit, biking, and walking. And examples of improvements for safety include things like emergency kiosks or lighting, physically separating bikes from cars on major roads, enhanced biking and walking connections across freeways, improved access to transit stations. Examples there include crosswalks, bike facilities, and flexible fleets, expanded transit coverage and enhanced transit services. So thinking about things like frequency and reliability, more affordable transit, more amenities while traveling. So that could include USB charging, Wi-Fi, bike repair stations, wider sidewalks with seating, lighting, shading, or landscaping. And then improved maintenance of existing facilities such as sidewalks, bike paths, or roadways. And finally, smarter transportation facilities that minimize delays. So that could be things like synchronized traffic lights, transit priority signals, or real-time travel information. And again, if other thoughts come to mind, you can put them in the chat. Okay, we'll give you maybe another 30 seconds or so on this poll. Oh, I see something came in through the chat from Alan. Thank you for submitting something there. The note is connect transit between neighborhoods. Mission Valley has a trolley nearby neighborhoods cannot access. Thank you for that feedback. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and pull up the poll results. All right, so it looks like many of you indicated improved access to transit stations and expanded transit coverage or enhanced transit services. And I actually skipped over the most popular selection here, which was physically separate bikes from cars. Okay, great. And then there's also some interest in feeling safe, more affordable transit, improved maintenance of existing facilities, and smarter transportation facilities. Okay, so some mixed opinions there, a lot of good feedback. Thank you. Okay. Rachel's going to take us through some additional existing conditions information.
Thanks, Jessica. So when we start a corridor plan, we want to understand the community in its existing state and also taking a look out to the future. So looking at some of the demographic information in our study area, we note that we have about just over 20% of the population, housing, and jobs in the region in this area. And the study area also includes a substantial number of seniors, low-income households, and people of color. And we're also making sure that as we do the corridor study, that we're focusing on the needs of these social equity focused communities. And this will help inform the recommendations and the transportation projects that we identify so that we can make sure that all residents and all people using the corridor have good access to transportation to get to jobs, opportunities, and services. So in taking a look at where we're going, it's important to understand how the area has grown over time. And over the last 20 years, population and jobs have grown at a very similar rate in our study area. However, you'll see that housing has grown at a slower rate. And with that said, there are a number of development projects that are currently underway throughout our study area, especially in Mission Valley, with the Savita, Riverwalk, SDSU, Mission Valley developments, all which are going to bring additional housing to the region in this corridor. And as we grow and continue to grow, it's important that we develop new mobility alternatives to get people to those jobs and destinations. And so now we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into some more of the existing conditions information. On this slide here, we can see information on our social equity focused communities. And as you can see from this map, we have greater concentrations of senior, minority, and low-income households located in the communities of Linda Vista, City Heights, and El Cajon. Looking at housing density within our study area, about 22% of the region's housing units are located in our project study area, with the greatest concentrations shown in the Uptown community, City Heights, between University Avenue and El Cajon Boulevard, and in the city of El Cajon. And as we indicated earlier, about 20% of the region's jobs are located within our study area. And these jobs are located largely within the different employment centers that you can see in orange on this map. We have some of the region's major job centers with the Kearney Mesa Job Center and downtown being just to the south of our study area. We also have some what we call tier 2, kind of our second largest category of job centers in the region, located in the Midway, Uptown, Linda Vista, Mission Valley, and San Diego State, and Central La Mesa and El Cajon communities. And then we also have a lot of regional points of interest within this corridor. So a number of higher educational institutions, including Mesa College, University of San Diego, and SDSU, a number of healthcare facilities, major regional shopping centers at Mission Valley and Fashion Valley malls, Grossmont Center, Parkway Plaza, a number of sporting venues in this area, including Sports Arena, SDSU Mission Valley, the Viejas Arena, Torero Stadium, and these bring both seasonal and event traffic in the study area. As we move to our next slide, you can see our existing transit network. So we do have quite a bit of existing public transportation in this area, with the blue line trolley being kind of over in the western portion of our study area, the line that now extends from the US-Mexico border up to the UTC area. We have the green line that travels from east to west, from the Old Town Station to Santee Town Center, and the orange line that serves East County cities, including Lemmon Grove, La Mesa, El Cajon, and Santee. We have some rapid bus routes that travel along State Route 163 and I-15, connecting downtown to North County. However, they don't offer too many stops within the study area. Additionally, we have the Mid-City Rapid Route 215 that connects downtown to SDSU via Park Boulevard and El Cajon Boulevard, and also provides connections to students and residents and workers in North Park, City Heights, and College area. So, while we do have a number of different colorful lines on this map, there's quite a few transit service gaps too that you can see when you start overlaying the existing transit network on top of the employment centers and some of these key destinations that folks are looking to get to. The areas in Midway, El Cajon are mainly serviced by local buses. And Uptown and Kearny Mesa have some rapid buses that go through them, but that don't have stations or stops. So looking to improve higher quality transit that will increase coverage and give people fast and reliable service is really important if we want more people to be able to access their destinations via transit. So before we get into some information about the existing bicycle network, we want to take a few minutes to familiarize you with 4 recognized bicycle facility classifications. So moving from left to right on the slide here, you can see first the Class 1 bike path. This can also be referred to as a multi-use path or a shared use path. And Class 1 facilities provide a completely separated right-of-way designed exclusively for the use of bicycles and pedestrians. And it really minimizes cross flows by motorists. Bike paths can be provided connections where roadways are non-existent or not able to support bike travel. And then the second classification there is the Class 2 bike lane. This provides a stripe lane designated exclusively or semi-exclusively for the use of bicycles. And through travel by motor vehicles and pedestrians is not encouraged as well. Bike lanes are one-way facilities located on either side of the road, and additional enhancements such as painted buffers and signage could also be included. And additionally, sometimes bike lanes also have a stripe buffer area with a few feet of width to provide some separation from vehicles. The third one, the Class 3 bike route, provides for shared use of traffic lanes with cyclists and motor vehicles. And this is identified with signage or on-street markings known as sharrows. Some of you may have seen those in some places around town. These type of routes are really best suited for low speed, low volume roadways as they don't provide a separate space for bicycles. But they can be used to maybe connect with some more significant bicycle facilities on other roadways. And then Class 4 cycle tracks. These can also be referred to sometimes as separated or protected bikeways. They provide a right-of-way that's designated exclusively for bicycle travel within the roadway and physically protected from vehicle traffic. So cycle tracks can either be one-way or two-way travel, and different types of separation can be used and are not limited to grade separation, flexible posts, or curbs. So on this next map here, you can see the existing active transportation network. And our region has implemented a number of active transportation facilities in recent years. One example that you may be familiar with if you've traveled in kind of the Bankers Hill uptown area more recently is the cycle tracks along 4th and 5th Avenue. But there's still a lot that needs to be done in order for San Diegans to have a connected, accessible, safe, active transportation network, and one that's really suitable for users of all ages and all abilities. And so we have the existing network here shown on the slide. It's mainly comprised of bike lanes and bike route facilities that do not provide physical separation from vehicular traffic. And based on more recent design guidance from Caltrans, federal partners, protected bike lanes should be offered along roadways with high travel speeds and high vehicular volumes. And there's quite a few of these within the study area. Friars Road, Oklahoma Boulevard, Fletcher Parkway, Fairmount, and others as well. And then we also know that Interstate 8 is a barrier to active transportation because crossings, sidewalks, or other walking paths and bike facilities that go either over or under the freeway are infrequent. And then often people also have to interact with the freeway on and off ramps. So another aspect that we have also taken a look at are pinch points, existing traffic bottlenecks. So on this map here, you can see there's some arrows. The red arrows are showing some of the region's top 10 pinch points for traffic, and then the yellow are the top 50. So the study area includes 3 of the region's top 10 most congested areas and 14 of the region's top 50 most congested areas. Areas with the highest levels of congestion occur in the middle of the corridor between I-15 and Fairmount. And this is associated with traffic merging and weaving within short distances. And then there's also significant periods of congestion at the 805 and 15 interchange. And so now I'd like to pass it to Jessica for another poll question.
Thanks, Rachel. So now that we've reviewed some of the existing conditions information, we'd like to understand your top transportation concerns for the study area. And we're asking again that you select all that apply. So your options are travel safety, traffic congestion, transit availability and transit service reliability, roadway flooding, limited transportation choices, access to economic opportunity, such as jobs or education, efficient goods movement, connecting affordable housing and jobs, in other words, efficient land use, cleaner transportation, so thinking about transportation that can reduce climate change impacts and air pollution, or other. And I will note that we did get a note in the chat in the meantime indicating that class 3 is awful. You have fenders on one side and doors on the other. So, those are the types of observations that we're looking for here tonight in your other comments to help the team as we're thinking about potential transportation solutions moving forward. So appreciate that note. And we'll give you a little bit of time here to get your responses in. Probably about another 30 seconds or so. And if you have other thoughts or specific examples, you can drop those in the chat to us. And just a reminder, you can put your questions in the Q&A feature and we'll review them when we get to the Q&A session. All right, let's take a look at the poll results. Oh, I see Mark also added a note in the chat. There seems to be a transit deficiency from Mission Valley to Balboa Park. Thanks for that feedback. So that'll be collated with the feedback on this question. So thanks for dropping that in the chat. Let's see, we had quite a few people indicate cleaner transportation, followed by traffic congestion, transit availability, and transit service reliability. And those were followed by limited transportation choices, connecting affordable housing and jobs. And then we also had additional feedback related to travel safety and others. And if you all have specific feedback related to the choices that you made in the poll, feel free to bring those up during the Q&A or put them in the chat because they'll all be compiled as part of the feedback tonight. All right, so Melina is going to take us through active transportation.
Thank you, Jessica. So we will now step through a quick summary of some of the pressing challenges related to active transportation, transit, vehicles, and resilience. Freeways are common barriers to active transportation users, and the Kumeyaay corridor is no exception. So the study area is aligned with Interstate 8 and has several other intersecting freeways. Freeways have limited crossing points and where present are often uncomfortable places for people walking and bicycling. Another challenge is the lack of facilities serving people of all ages and abilities. For example, bike lanes along 4 to 6 lane roadways can deter trips by bike, or intersections with poorly marked crosswalks may not be comfortable for pedestrians. So here are some examples of the type of improvements for active transportation. To the top left are curb extensions, and these allow pedestrians to be more visible before crossing an intersection, and the crossing distance is greatly reduced. Then there's the pedestrian countdown signal. In the middle of this slide is the lead pedestrian interval. This allows pedestrians to enter an intersection a few seconds before the vehicles getting the green light. Next, to the right is the pedestrian hybrid beacon. It is best installed at uncontrolled mid-block crossings where a fair number of pedestrians and cyclists are expected. These have shown to significantly reduce pedestrian crashes. And then to the bottom left is an example of a protected intersection. So protected intersections can reduce the likelihood of high-speed vehicle turns, improve sight lines, and dramatically reduce the distance and time during which people on foot or bikes are exposed to conflicts. So as Rachel mentioned earlier, most recent design guidance from Caltrans, FHWA, and NACTO strongly recommend that protected bike facilities should be offered along high-speed, high-volume roadways. To this end, facilities like the Bayshore Bikeway to the top left of the slide and the Long Beach Cycle Track to the right offer great comfort for riders of all ages and abilities, as these facilities are completely separated from vehicular traffic. Even with protected bike lanes, cyclists are still vulnerable at intersections, and hence treatments like bicycle signal, no turn on red signage, and protected intersections are much needed. And now back to Jessica for another polling question.
All right, so we're going to think about bikes next. So if you are able to ride a bike, what would it take for you to consider riding a bike instead of driving? And we'll be touching on some of the items that Melina reviewed with us. So separated or protected bikeways, more route or destination choices, public access to e-bikes, bike share program, secure bike parking, sufficient bike transport on transit. And then if you have other thoughts, go ahead and put them in the chat. I know we've gotten some feedback on the cyclist experience already, so please feel free to provide more detail. Appreciate that. Okay. So we've got a note from Alan, bike theft enforcement by law enforcement. Mark has a note on well-maintained first-class bike path. Thank you both for that feedback. And I see someone popped in a transportation concern from an earlier poll, noting that private vehicles are the most inefficient use of energy and land to move people. So thank you for this feedback, appreciate it. One more note from Paul here. I live in a small place and storing a bike is too difficult, so bike sharing is attractive. Okay, thank you. This is great feedback. Keep it coming. We'll give it maybe 30 more seconds. Another note, I'm older and have stopped riding a bike due to dangers. Okay. All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a look at the poll results. Okay, so separated and protected bikeways clearly have a lot of support here, followed by secure bike parking and more route or destination choices, and then some support for the additional items we see on the screen. Okay, great, thank you. And we got some good feedback in the chat there. We're going to move on to a companion question, thinking about pedestrian options. So the question is, what would it take to make pedestrian options more comfortable? And the responses here are convenient and safe and accessible sidewalks and crossings, emergency kiosks and additional lighting, closer destinations with active sidewalks, so where you have other people out and walking around, wider sidewalks, access to transit options, shaded sidewalks, rest areas, and traffic calming. And if you have additional thoughts or you want to elaborate on your choice, you can put that information in the chat. Okay, give it 30 more seconds. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional responses on the chat, so we'll go ahead and take a look. Oh, and Paul dropped a note in here for us. Let's see. I've walked every street in normal heights and too much of the area is sun blasted. Shade would be great. Okay. Thank you. All right, and it looks like we have 3 responses where we've got some pretty significant interest. So convenient and safe and accessible sidewalks and crossings, shaded sidewalks, and traffic calming, and then some additional interest in wide sidewalks and some other features here. Okay. Thank you for that feedback. And Melina is going to take us through some transit challenges.
Thank you, Jessica. So now let's take a look at some transit challenges. Long transit travel times may be due to things like buses stuck in traffic, the need for multiple transfers to reach a destination, or too many stops along a route. So the left image on this slide shows that it takes well over an hour to get to the Sharp Memorial Hospital from City Heights on transit, while it only takes 12 minutes when you're driving. So accessing transit on high quality transit services is another challenge. For example, many of the Green Line trolley stations are adjacent to the I-8 and the river. The image to the right is an accessibility assessment of the 7 existing stations in Mission Valley. The pink circles represent the half-mile crow flies buffer from each station, while the yellow shape indicates the 0.5-mile travel sheds utilizing the available network. So as shown, the stations to the right, so that's Fenton Parkway, the former Qualcomm Stadium station, the Mission San Diego station, they all have poor accessibility to the south, and this is largely due to the lack of north-south infrastructure connections. Alvarado and 70th Street stations also along the Green Line are facing similar challenges. So the top and bottom left of this slide shows the Mid-City Rapid along Park Boulevard, accompanied by transit signal priority treatments. The transit-only lane and the transit signal priority treatment allows buses to operate in its own space, avoid traffic congestion, and get priority at intersections over other vehicles on the road, hence greatly improving the transit operations and on-time performance. To the top middle is the bus on shoulder pilot on 805 northbound connector to the 94 westbound lanes. And this allows specially trained bus drivers to be able to use certain freeway shoulders along 805 and 94 during peak travel times to bypass slow traffic. To the bottom middle is the pedestrian bridge accessing the Fashion Valley station, and it removes the river barrier and improves accessibility to this station. And then there's the mobility hub, which is a schematic curbside mobility hub versus a much larger mobility hub at the Green Line station at SDSU. And back to you, Jessica, for another poll.
All right, so thinking about transit, what would it take for you to use transit more often? Increased frequency or better on-time performance, faster travel times, enhanced station amenities, reduced fares, more choices and modes of transportation, greater span of services, direct routes to where you need to go, feeling safer or more comfortable on public transit, feeling safer while waiting for transit, especially at night, or other. So we'll give you a few minutes to respond here. And I did want to note, Catherine, I saw your question come through about adding neighborhoods to the study area. We'll definitely touch on that in the Q&A. I didn't want you to think we didn't see that. We'll come back to it. And if you have other thoughts on transit, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. Okay. All right. I think we'll give it about 10 seconds and then take a look at the poll results here. So Paul has a note, too much planning of housing is based on, quote, crow flies access to transportation. TPA maps are a prime example. Okay, in terms of the poll results, we have pretty significant interest in faster travel times, which lines up with Melina's review of existing conditions, followed by direct routes to where I need to go. And then feeling safer while waiting for transit, increased frequency, better on-time performance, and some interest in the other options as well. Okay, and I don't see any more notes in the chat here on transit, but if you think of anything, go ahead and put that in the chat. And we'll move on to roadway and vehicular challenges.
Thank you, Jessica. Safety is a concern throughout the study area, with most collisions concentrated along freeways and arterials. One example is the closely spaced ramps along I-8. At these locations, cars are both entering and exiting the freeway, changing lanes or weaving at high speeds in short distances. Greater traffic volumes are present during morning and evening commutes, which result in congestion along freeways and major arterials. So here to the top left is an example of HOV lanes in use during peak travel time. To the bottom left is the I-15 managed express lanes. The express lanes provide congestion relief and help ease demand on the general purpose lanes. A movable barrier separates the northbound and southbound express lanes, which enables operators to increase or decrease the number of lanes in each direction to manage congestion. In the middle are the route shield pavement markings, also known as the advanced pavement markings on I-8. These pavement markings provide the drivers with lane guidance and warning information near freeway interchanges and reduce weaving. To the top right is the active traffic management signs, such as the dynamic message signs on I-15, and these relay information about crashes, speed limit changes, and lane restrictions, thus improving safety and traffic flows by reducing differential travel speeds and the likelihood of secondary crashes. And then to the bottom right is much of the study area roadways are built out to their full right-of-way. And as our region continues to grow, technology will play a more significant role than ever in order to accommodate traffic. So adaptive and autonomous signal systems is just one of the techniques to improve traffic operations by enhancing signal communications. And Jessica, back to you for another poll.
Thanks, Melina. All right. So what are your concerns about freeways that need to be addressed? Safety, traffic congestion on I-8, merging on short on and off ramps, confusing navigation or little to no warning about upcoming traffic, aging roadways and infrastructure, freeways acting as barriers to walking or biking, lack of carpool lanes, and finally, freeway congestion resulting in motorists using surface streets. Okay, so we've got a specific comment related to some of these responses. I find the carpool lane scary when there is a speed differential with the other lanes, as cars sometimes violate the separation. I'll check and see if there are other thoughts that people would like to put in the chat here. Let's see how our poll is doing. Okay, we'll give it another maybe 15 seconds. Okay, let's take a look at the poll results. Okay, we have quite a few people that indicated traffic congestion on I-8, followed by merging on short on and off ramps, aging roadways and infrastructure, and freeways acting as barriers to walking and biking, and some additional feedback on the other responses as well. Paul had a comment, there are sections of 8 and 163 where access is too easy for pedestrians to walk onto the freeway. Okay. All right. So thank you for that feedback. And we're going to look at resilience now.
Thank you, Jessica. So now let's take a look at some climate stressors. Adaptation refers to adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climate stimuli or their effects, which moderates harm or exploits beneficial opportunities. Resilience is the capacity of an entity, an individual, a community, an organization, or a natural system to prepare for disruptions, to recover from shocks and stresses, and to adapt and grow from a disruptive experience. So as climate changes, there will be a number of impacts experienced in California. Just to highlight a few, overall temperatures are rising. We all felt that severe heat wave last week, and there will be more heat waves, droughts, wildfire events that we experience, and these will become more frequent and more severe. So sea levels are rising, and flooding will increase as we experience more intense storm events. So as we develop the CMCPs, we particularly need to focus in on the climate stresses shown on the right hand of the slide, as these will be the most impactful to the San Diego region. Back to you, Jessica, for another polling question.
Thanks, Melina. All right, so now we're asking you to identify the 3 most important resilience elements you would like us to analyze for the Kumeyaay corridor. And your options are power outages, extreme heat events, flooding or river overflow, wildfire, evacuation congestion, sea level rise, extreme precipitation, earthquakes, drought. And if you have other thoughts, you can put them in the chat. I do see a few people have also entered, or we have a couple of questions that have come in the Q&A. Thank you. We'll probably get to the Q&A here in about 5 minutes or so. So you can start popping your questions in there if you have questions. Okay, we'll give it 10 more seconds. So you all can wrap up your poll responses. Okay, so we have flooding and river overflow and earthquakes coming in with the most interest, followed by wildfire and sea level rise. And then behind that, drought and extreme heat events, as well as some others. So thank you for that feedback. I see also there's a note in the chat related to flooding. Is there a way to capture rainwater from freeway runoff? So perhaps we can touch on that during the Q&A. Thanks for that note. And I'll pass it back to Melina.
Thank you, Jessica. So based on prior plans, your input and data analysis, the project team will develop improvement strategies throughout the corridor. These improvement strategies will be built on the needs of the various travel modes and technology, and together they will create a layered multimodal network of strategies that complement each other. Jessica, back to you for another poll question.
Thanks, Melina. So here we're looking for feedback on what other transportation options you wish you could use and or use more frequently within the study area. So walking, biking, electric bicycle or e-bikes, scooters, skateboards, or other personal mobility devices, trolley, coaster, or Amtrak, bus, and that could be rapid or local bus, a car driving alone, a carpool or van pool, and then ride hailing or ride sharing, such as Uber or Lyft, or other. Okay, let's see how our poll is doing here. Okay, we'll give it about 10 more seconds. All right, so a lot of interest in the trolley, coaster, or Amtrak, followed by walking, biking, and then kind of some mixed opinions on the remaining items. So thank you for that feedback. And if you want to follow up in the Q&A with any additional questions or comments, we'll welcome those. All right, back to you, Melina.
Thanks, Jessica. So now I'd like to share some information about our public engagement process. So we, Sandag and Caltrans, are using a number of public engagement methods to collect feedback on transportation needs and issues. Those methods are identified in this graphic. So we will have a series of subject matter expert meetings in social equity focus communities, public meetings like the one we're having today, community planning group meetings, agency coordination team meetings, various working groups and committees, as well as our virtual engagement hub. So Sandag and Caltrans have created a virtual engagement hub for this project that is dedicated to providing updated project information and opportunities for you to participate. You can use your smartphone to access the Kumeyaay Corridor CMCP site. And on this site, you can take a survey about transportation in the corridor, leave a comment or a question, and also complete an interactive mapping activity. So, and with that, Jessica will now lead us into the question and answer session.
Whoops, sorry about that. My mute button got stuck. Okay, here we go. So we're moving into the question and answer session. And if you have a question or comment, we're asking that you type it into the Q&A box, and we've got a few that have come in already. And then I will direct your questions to members of the project team. If for some reason you're unable to type your question or you're participating by phone, you can use the raise hand function, and I will call on you to ask your question verbally. I see we do have a couple of people calling in on the phone. So if you're not logged into Zoom and you're just on the phone, you can raise your hand by entering *9 on your phone, and then I'll call on you by the last few digits of your phone number. And I'd also like to note that we will try to answer as many questions as possible this evening. If for some reason we aren't able to get to all of the questions, we'll post responses on the virtual engagement hub, the link to which we'll provide again for you. And finally, I'll just ask that you are civil in your comments and questions and use appropriate language. And we would appreciate that. All right, let's take a look at questions that have come through here. All right, so Rachel, there was a question about adding La Playa neighborhood, South Rosecrans Street, and Catalina to include Naval Base Point Loma traffic. Could you address that question, please?
Sure. So as folks may have seen in one of the maps that we featured towards the beginning of the presentation, we currently do have 6 different corridor plans that are ongoing. And the project managers from all those different corridor plans do coordinate and talk with each other. So it's a little hard to see when we have all the different colors overlaid here, but we have another corridor plan that's happening with the Central Mobility Hub. They had a meeting last week. And within their area, it's not as reflected as much on this map, but they have their area of influence kind of similar to this corridor that does extend the whole length there of the peninsula. So that team has been coordinating with the naval base and taking a look at the travel patterns within that corridor. So we are taking a look at that and at transportation solutions for that area, but it's as part of the Central Mobility Hub, CMCP.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay. All right, it looks like the next question is for Jennifer Williamson, who's a regional planning program manager at Sandag. And the question is, what are the transit plans for the area east of El Cajon? All the transit options are in the city of San Diego. Biking and pedestrian choices are not beneficial to areas outside the transit areas discussed.
Yes, so that's a really valid point. And you know, we took a deep look at some of the areas east of El Cajon and Santee, and due to the nature of their low density development, what we've established is that El Cajon will serve as a gateway hub, if you will. And what I mean by that is that there'll be extensive services, and it'll be one of the only stations that we may or may not include park and ride at, so that people can drive in and access the service there. We're also looking at extensive flexible fleets, and that's microtransit, shuttles, smaller buses, things that can penetrate communities that aren't dense in nature. And those will provide short trips as well as trips that will connect them to transit in the more urban areas of if you will, of El Cajon and Santee.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, we're going to move on to the next question. This is a question for Rachel again. How will the CMCPs work with upcoming VMT?
So with the quarter plans, we are going to be taking a look at, all the different transportation solutions that are developed, and we run them through our activity-based transportation model that we have at Sandag, both for a base year and then also for future years. And one of the things that we do look at is vehicle miles traveled. As some folks on the meeting tonight may be familiar, California has set targets for reducing greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled. And that's part of the planning that Sandag and Caltrans and other agencies have to do, is looking at reducing that through a variety of different strategies. So that is something that we're going to be taking a look at, both looking at current conditions and then also future projections. And hopefully through offering more travel choices, cleaner ways for people to travel, we can help to reduce some of the vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. All right, let's see what else has come through. Okay. So Rachel, I think another question for you. How does Sandag interface with DSD for determination of transportation priority areas, TPA, in order to coordinate a smart growth holistic plan?
Sure. So we do collaborate with all the local jurisdictions within our region and also with state partners. And the combination of land use, which is not something in the purview of Sandag, that remains with the control of the local jurisdictions. But obviously there's a very important relationship between land use and transportation. In order to have effective, higher ridership on public transportation, it really needs to be surrounded with supportive land uses. So we do work with our local partner agencies to try and better, link the two. Some of the different elements, the transit priority areas, I personally am not involved with the interaction at the state level on some of those different elements, but we have a team at Sandag that's working on housing, and we have a team that interfaces directly with local jurisdictions on land use. So we do want to tie together, in an effective way, land use and transportation, so that we can be having public transportation where we have higher concentrations of people and can move them, effectively through the region.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, I'm gonna just check and see. I don't see any hands raised right now. We've had a number of comments come in. So wanted to acknowledge all of the comments and feedback that we've received. And I think I've read out a number of the comments that came through in the chat. A new one just came through. Please consider the recreational activities in the corridor for people that want to go to Mission Beach, Ocean Beach, Mission Bay, and Balboa Park. As you know, those places are congested on summer weekends. All right, and I think we have a question for Sam, if he's still on the line. And the question was, related to flooding, is there a way to capture rainwater from freeway runoff?
Yeah, there is always a way we can capture the water from the runoff. Currently, the way we do it is we capture it and we keep it on site infiltrate. So basically we keep it on site, but we never test it in a way that we can treat it and use it, probably because it's multiple location and cost effectiveness.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sam. All right. I don't see any more questions in the queue right now. We'll go ahead and, give you all a few minutes to submit more questions. Okay, I see a couple more came in. Thank you. So we have one about the shift to electric vehicles. Is the shift to electric vehicles influencing planning, such as highways and parking versus public transportation? Great question. Let's see. Looks
I
like
can take that, Jessica.
Mhm.
So we're certainly aware of the shift to electric vehicles, and as you may know, recently California just adopted guidance or regulation saying that starting in 2035, all vehicles sold in the state of California will need to be electric powered. Gas-powered vehicles will not be sold anymore in California after 2035. We are incorporating things like electric vehicle charging into the corridor plans. We're also starting to look at other technologies like induction charging along roadways and things like that. So we are certainly taking that into consideration as we're doing planning. And as far as it relates to public transportation, we also are anticipating MTS has some electric buses that they've been piloting, and I think that the public transportation fleet itself will probably move more to electric vehicles. I think there's still a important role for public transportation to be playing in moving people around. Electric vehicles may eliminate the emissions, at the point of the car, but there's still, congestion with vehicles, on the roadway, whether they're battery operated or gas powered. So we're certainly well aware and looking at supporting infrastructure for electrical vehicle use, but there's a role for multiple modes of travel to play in our region as well.
Thank you, Rachel. All right. I think we've got about 5 minutes or so left in the Q&A session here. We do have one more question. I think this question is probably appropriate for Melina. What about the pinch point on East Interstate 8 at Greenfield Drive?
Thank you, Jessica. So that's a great question. And, we're early in the CMCP process for this corridor. So we're looking at a variety of different transportation solutions.
Melina, you're cutting out just a bit. I don't know if you can move closer to your mic.
Sure. Is it better now?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So like I was saying, we are still early on in the process for the CMCP. So we're looking at all of these issues and we want to hear from you. So, I encourage you to use our virtual engagement hub and drop a pin at any specific location and add your question or comment. So we will definitely make a note of this comment and we will take a look at that pinch point on East Interstate 8 at Greenfield Drive. And if you have any other similar questions or comments, any specific locations, Social Pinpoint is a great place to drop your comments and let us know what we can take a look at. So thank you.
Thanks, Melina. Yeah, and I just have Social Pinpoint open right now, and it looks like we've got a good number of comments there. So it'd be great if people could add to that. And we just put the link in the chat for you there. Okay. Oh, I see a hand. Let's see. Looks like Catherine Rhodes has her hand up. Let's go ahead and get Catherine unmuted.
Hello. Just wanted to make a comment for the area in the Midway area and the Central Mobility Hub and Airport. All those areas are former marshlands with a low water table. And the only way you can, fight against sea level rise is to do something called a, bathtub foundation, where you try to actually take out that liquefiable soils. So, just the Midway Rising just came out, and their plan is to do actually nothing, just to build at grade and have all their parking, above grade and on a different site. And so, just for you, I'm just hoping you guys have a plan for all the former marshland liquefiable soil areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, we'll go ahead and make a note of that suggestion. And I think we had an additional comment come in. Let's see. Oh, there's a question, and this, this might be our last question. We might have time for maybe one or two more, so we should start wrapping things up. But there's a question about, are there any plans to reduce the number of on or off ramps to increase freeway safety?
And I can take that, Jessica. So like I said earlier, nothing is off the table at this point because we are early in the process with the CMCP. So we're definitely looking at all of those weaving issues, on ramps and off ramps that are too close to each other. So yes, we will be looking at that.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. Okay, I think we'll probably give it maybe another minute or so to see if any additional questions come to mind. I'm not seeing any right now. I appreciate all your feedback up until this point. And you can also go to Social Pinpoint if anything comes to mind after the meeting. We've got a note from someone. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you for spending your evening with us. All right, I think we'll go ahead and go to next steps.
Thanks, Jessica, and thanks to all of you for your great questions and your comments and responding to the poll questions. As Jessica mentioned earlier, we're recording all of this tonight, and we'll be using it to inform our development of the corridor plan. We're also recording this meeting tonight, so if you have friends or neighbors who weren't able to make it and might like to watch the video, it will be posted to our website. Here on this slide, you can see kind of our high-level schedule. So over the fall and winter, the project team will be developing more specific transportation solutions to propose for this corridor. And so your input here is really important to help inform these recommendations. As was mentioned earlier, we have a virtual engagement hub, and I'll have a link to that again in the next slide. There you can go online and take a survey. You can give us a general comment on a comment form. And then we also have the interactive map that we showed in one of the slides earlier. And I think that's the most fun part of the website. So there you can go and drop individual pins with ideas that you may have, questions, concerns you may have, specific spots where you would like to see specific transportation enhancements or improvements, areas where you're having challenges or something you want to flag for our attention. So I definitely would encourage all of you, if you haven't had a chance to check that out yet, to spend a few minutes and maybe pass that information on to other folks who might also be interested. In the spring of next year, we're going to have a second round of public outreach to share the transportation solutions that are being considered and recommended, and to get further input. And then we are planning to have a draft comprehensive multimodal corridor plan in the spring of next year, and then the final plans anticipated in summer of next year. And then here on our last slide that we have, again, we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your evening to join us and to give us comments. There's a lot of really great feedback that was put in the chat and in the Q&A. And we have a lot of different ways that you can interact with us. So I know we've mentioned the virtual engagement hub a couple of times. We have a web page there that has fact sheets and some other information too. If you have other ideas that come up, you're welcome to text them on our texting line. We have a phone line where you can leave messages, and that's checked on a regular basis, and someone will get back to you. And then we have information here for our social media as well. So with that, that concludes our workshop for tonight. Thank you so much. Melina and I really appreciate you all being here and providing your feedback. And we hope that you continue to participate throughout the process. So have a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.